Hello. Hello, everyone, and happy National Library Week. I'm Andrew Medler, and I'm proud to be president and director of Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh. And on behalf of our amazing board of trustees, several members of whom are here this evening, and our incredible staff who are also here, I want to, yes! It is my happy duty to welcome you to what promises to be a transformative experience for all of us, the inaugural Vivian and Davidson Hewitt Lecture. Together with our wonderful partners, the Allegheny County Library Association and the University of Pittsburgh School of Computing and Information, CLP is honored to establish this annual lecture series to celebrate the work, the life, and the legacy of a truly trailblazing librarian and Pittsburgher. It is the intention of this new lecture series that by inviting a prominent library worker of color to share their story, that it will enable and encourage young people to explore library work as a possible path for contributing their talents to ensure a strong, inclusive community with the library at its heart that nurtures individual and collective achievement, access to knowledge, and a sense of joy and belonging. I really look forward to this being an annual event, inspiring future library workers for generations to come, and how lucky all of us are here, because years and years and years from now, we will all be able to say, I was there the first time. And I remember it was the day after the eclipse, I'll also say that. And how wonderful that at this first lecture, we are joined not just by any prominent trailblazing librarian, but by the very best. And as another famous lover of books says, you don't have to take my word for that. No one other than the President of the United States, Barack Obama, appointed her to be the 14th Librarian of Congress. Dr. Carla Hayden is here virtually with us tonight. This important effort is made possible in part by the generous support from the Jack Buncher Foundation, and I offer my thanks to them, my thanks to the incredible CLP team, particularly Communications and Creative Services, Carlin Voss, our Director of External and Government Relations, and Dr. Deborah Rogers, our Director of Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility. Thanks to our partners at ACLA and to Pitt, and the team at the largest library in the world, the Library of Congress. And especially, thank you to the Hewitt family for allowing us to be a part of making this celebration happen. And it is my true pleasure to invite Vivian Hewitt to the podium now to offer reflections on her grandmother, Dame Vivian Ann Davidson Hewitt.
Hi, everyone. On behalf of the Hewitt family, I'd like to thank Carnegie Library and their dedicated staff that has worked so hard to put together this amazing event. This is one of the many ways that the Pittsburgh community has come together to honor and celebrate my late grandmother, Vivian Ann Davidson Hewitt. When she passed, she was 102 years old, so I'm going to do my very best to compress her amazing life into a couple of minutes. She was born in 1920 and raised in Newcastle, PA. In her own words, she was part of the greatest generation because she was a Depression kid and a World War II kid. Her education brought her from getting her undergrad at Geneva College in Beaver to Pittsburgh, where she earned a library science degree from Carnegie Institute of Technology, which is now known as CMU. After graduation, she was hired by Carnegie Library and was Pittsburgh's very first African-American librarian. She even gave August Wilson his first library card. She has always spoken very fondly of her time at the Wiley Avenue branch and the Homewood branch. If you want to greater understand what life was like in Pittsburgh for the Black community, during her time in Pittsburgh, I highly recommend watching the WQED documentary, Wiley Avenue Days, which was actually recently uploaded on YouTube. During her time in Pittsburgh, she participated in the Aurora Reading Club, which is one of America's oldest African-American arts and cultural organizations and is still actively run today, and Vivian was a member for 75 years. I think she found so much joy, fellowship, and support in the participation of this club that throughout her life she joined in so many more, including the Jack and Jill Club, Alpha Kappa Alpha, the Northeasterners, and the Pierians. She always found a way to connect with local communities no matter where she landed. Life really took off for her after her big start. She went on to teach at Morehouse College in Atlanta, where she met her forever sweetheart, that nice red-headed boy, John Hewitt Jr. They were 90-day wonders, married 3 months after she announced their engagement on a dare. He never actually proposed. Although whirlwind, their 50-year marriage was so full of love, life, and art. They moved to New York City, where her husband was from, and their family grew by one son, my dad. Speaking of family, Vivian's slave roots family history has been accurately traced back to the 16th century and is included in the American Folklife Local Legacies Project housed at the Library of Congress. In 2006, the Librarian of Congress at the time, Dr. Billington, a friend of hers, attended the 100th family reunion. In New York, she went to work as head librarian for the Rockefeller Foundation, where she had an office on the 55th floor at the famous 30 Rock address. After 7 years, an announcement came over her desk looking for a librarian at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Bonus points if you could speak French, which she could, because that was her major at Geneva. She was a member of the Special Libraries Association, eventually taking on the role of president of the organization, where she traveled to dozens of countries to represent the SLA to the International Federation of Library Associations. Vivian collected even more titles and honors throughout her life. She's received distinguished alumni awards from Pitt, an honorary doctorate in humane letters from CMU, named an urban hero by Geneva College, and a Heinz History Maker in education, just to name a few. One of her biggest bucket list achievements was being honored and appointed Dame through the Order of St. John by Queen Elizabeth II. Spiritually, she has found ways to connect with her original hometown church, Bethel AME, where to this day there is a sign dedicated to her mother, Leela Luveda Davidson. In New York City, she was active at St. Philip's, which was New York's first Black Episcopal church. She was also a member of St. John the Divine, which is the largest Episcopalian cathedral in the world, and she was a docent there for several years. And then there was art. The Hewitts started collecting art on their honeymoon and purchased their first original on their first trip to Haiti. I listened to an old interview, and my grandfather said they had $40 to spend for fun. The rest of the money they brought was enough to get them home. She had to choose between a handmade Haitian dress or an original painting by Luckner Lazard. She chose the painting. And she said after that first original purchase, they were hooked. The Hewitts collected and curated one of the largest and most comprehensive collections of Haitian and African American art in the world. They befriended most, if not all, of the artists throughout the years and hosted salons out of their own home to help support the artists. In 1998, 58 pieces were purchased by Bank of America, and the Hewitt collection was born. The collection traveled the country with Vivian at every ribbon cutting at every museum as it went on tour. The collection is permanently housed at the Harvey B. Gantt Center for African American Arts and Culture in Charlotte, North Carolina. I appreciate you all for celebrating Vivian's life this evening. If you'd like to learn more about Vivian, she encouraged people to Google her, so please do. She also wrote her memoirs called The One and Only, and that is available at several of the Carnegie Library locations. I'd just like to add that to those of you that are currently studying library science, please know that how much this community appreciates your field of study. You are the connective thread that ties the past to the present and the future. And to the guest of honor, Dr. Carla Hayden, thank you for your stewardship of the Library of Congress, which Vivian called the most special library of all the libraries. Thank you. And now I invite Mary Kay Biagini to the podium to introduce our inaugural lecturer, Dr. Hayden.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the University of Pittsburgh, it's really an honor to be able to introduce Dr. Carla Hayden. And her career parallels Vivian Hewitt's early career, so it's very fitting that Carla is the inaugural speaker at this lecture series. Both of these women were pioneers in different eras of American history. Both began their library careers serving young people. Vivian Hewitt in 1944 as the teen librarian at the Hill District branch of the Carnegie Library, which was then on Wiley Avenue, and Carla Hayden as a children's librarian at the Chicago Public Library. Vivian Hewitt was the second person of color to earn a library degree from this program, which began in 1901 here at the Carnegie Library, moved to Carnegie Tech, and finally to the University of Pittsburgh. And 50 years later, almost, Carla Hayden served on the faculty, another parallel. Dr. Hayden advanced. She coordinated the young adult services at the Chicago Public Library. Then she moved to another famous Chicago landmark, the Museum of Science and Industry. She coordinated their library services while she was earning her PhD at the University of Chicago. In fall 1987, the new Dr. Hayden came to Pittsburgh to join the faculty. That's where we became colleagues. In 1991, she returned in triumph to the Chicago Public Library, where she served as the deputy commissioner and the chief librarian. And in 1995, she was named the librarian and the CEO of the Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore. And in 1995, she was then named the Librarian of the Year by Library Journal for her outreach into the Baltimore communities, including a very famous after-school center for teens, keeping that service to young adults going. She was the first person of color to be named Librarian of the Year. In 2002, she was elected president of the American Library Association, which is the most prestigious elected position for librarians, and she chose as her theme equity of access, which emphasized that all people should have access to information that they need. And she stated at the time, by finally embracing equity of access, we will be affirming our core values, recognizing realities, and assuring our future. In her role as ALA president, she publicly opposed the Patriot Act, and she led the battle to protect privacy of library users. For this, she was named Ms. Magazine's 2003 Woman of the Year. She then had been awarded since 9 honorary doctorates and awards too numerous to mention. I think one of the most important things in Carla's career was how she handled what happened in Baltimore in 2015, when protests over the deaths of Freddie Gray. Carla kept the Baltimore libraries open. And when she was asked, why did she do that? She said, in a lot of communities in Baltimore, especially challenged ones, public libraries are the only resource. If we close, we're sending a signal that we're afraid or that we aren't going to be available when times are tough. She was interviewed by Time magazine, and she stated, "We knew people would look for a place of refuge and relief and opportunity." The Library of Congress, founded in 1802, and 13 white men served as the Librarian of Congress in the 19th and the 20th century. So it wasn't until the 21st century, actually 2016, when President Barack Obama nominated Dr. Hayden for the position. And he said, "Michelle and I have known Carla Hayden since her days at the Chicago Public Library. She's devoted her career to modernizing libraries so that everyone can participate in today's digital culture. If confirmed, Hayden would be the first woman and the first African American to hold the position, both of which are long overdue." After that nomination, 140 different library, publishing, educational, and academic organizations wrote letters of support for Carla's nomination and to support it. And she was confirmed by the US Senate, actually just about 3 months later, first. She is also the first professional librarian to be named Librarian of Congress. Can you believe that? And so here is another parallel with Vivian Hewitt. Vivian Hewitt attended her inauguration after nominating her to President Obama. And so Carla Hayden has really expanded the mission of the Library of Congress to connect all Americans, not just Congress, but all of Americans. And so her Of the People initiative is creating a lot of opportunities for more Americans, especially those who are in communities of color underrepresented in the library's collection, to engage and to add their perspectives to this national collection. And then, strange as this may seem, just last night on PBS, there was the concert for the 2024 Library of Congress Gershwin Prize for Popular Song. And I happened to be watching, and there was Carla Hayden and her mother, Colleen, sitting in the first row, enjoying the concert and bringing people together. And she asked Elton John and Bernie Taupin, who won that award, to perform this song for the American people. What an illustrious career Carla is having. So following Carla's talk, we'll have a dialogue and questions from Kinzawanda Rhymes, who's sitting in the center of the stage. She's an ALA emerging leader, and Erica Hughes on the far right is an MLIS student who will be graduating this month from the University of Pittsburgh. And sitting here on the left is Santana Maitre, who is a senior at Obama Academy in the Pittsburgh Public Schools. So they'll be asking questions and dialoguing. So please join me in welcoming Carla Hayden as our first inaugural Vivian Hewitt Lecturer. Thank you.
And thank you, Mary Kay, for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. And it is truly only fitting that during National Library Week, and yes, Andrew, the day after an eclipse, that we are celebrating the life and legacy of one of the greatest librarians in our profession. And it is an honor for me to be part of the inauguration of this lecture series that will continue and keep her legacy going in a profession that needs role models like Dame Vivian and Davidson Hewitt, the one and only. I'll just say that, yes, she and her husband, John, and it was wonderful to hear her granddaughter talk about her achievements and that they were well known for their remarkable art collection. It was designed to instill and inspire. And she did the same thing, though, for the library field. And she continues. When you think about what she accomplished, not only in the library field, but what she did for culture, my goodness, giving the first library card to August Wilson, who also received his degree from the University of the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh years later, and credited this library for that. She remains and will always be one of the people who broke so many glass ceilings with her professionalism and her intellect, especially in a part of librarianship that is rarefied at times, and there are very few people of color in special librarianship. And I'd just like to read what she said about what special librarians are in the book, The Black Librarian in America, by one of our colleagues, E.J. Josie, who was teaching at the University of Pittsburgh as well. She said, special librarians are among the most sophisticated and aware people I know. They often get to travel and to meet interesting people. They are information experts providing specialized services to bankers, manufacturing concerns, newspapers, research organizations, advertising, insurance and government agencies, hospitals, museums, professional and trade associations, and to the fields of business, science, technology, and the social sciences. Whatever one's special, quote, thing is, it can be done in a special library. And she did it. On May 23rd, 2011, at the Library of Congress, my predecessor, Dr. James Billington, spoke about his special relationship and friendship with Dame Hewitt. And I love saying Dame Hewitt. The occasion was the celebration of her book, so aptly named The One and Only. And I checked to make sure that Andrew said that there are books available for checkout at tonight's event. So please. One of my colleagues, Dr. John Cole, who's the historian at the Library of Congress, introduced her at this special program as part of the Library of Congress's Books and Beyond, featuring people who had significant connection to the Library of Congress. And she was special again because she served as a member of the Center for the Book, the Library of Congress's outreach program, on their first National Advisory Board. And at that time, and it's on YouTube, so yes, you Google Vivian Hewitt and you get lots of information. And one of them is that May 23rd, 2011 program. And Dr. Billington noted her remarkable family legacy. He talked about the fact that U.S. Congressman Mel Watt, who was a member of the extended Hewitt family, invited him to a celebration at the centennial of their family reunion. And he decided to spotlight the Hewitt family in the library's American Folklife Center as one of the living legacy archives that is still available today. He even said, though, and this is something that I can't claim because I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal relationship with Dame Hewitt. He said that he even danced with her and said that he met her first, though, in 1991 in Moscow at the IFLA conference, International Federation of Library Association. And he noted that there were always special events when she attended. Well, right here in Pittsburgh, and I still say here in Pittsburgh because I feel I'm there with you, I was fortunate enough to formally meet this legend in library science in 1987 via another colleague and mentor when I came to teach at SLIS, as it was called, Professor Wendell Ray. Now, he was the first African-American man to graduate from the then Carnegie Institute Library School, and he later was the first African-American man to be hired by the Carnegie Library, and his specialty was oral history. He met Alex Haley working at New York Public Library. He later became director of the Schomburg Center there. But what was really something for me was he was a dear friend of the legendary Vivian Hewitt. So I got a chance to be introduced to her as a rookie to this legend. And I was very honored that she took an interest in my career. In fact, over the years, she kept up with me, sending notes of encouragement, even some fashion suggestions. And I made sure that I wore something that she probably would approve of because it was the jacket that she approved of when she attended my swearing in as the 14th Librarian of Congress. Over the years, she would make sure that those notes of encouragement, calls, kept me on the right path. And for her, the right path was making sure that whatever I did, and what she was overjoyed, I have to insert, when I became finally a special librarian at the Museum of Science and Industry in the true sense, but that whatever I did, that I made sure that the intellect and the professionalism were always evident, and that race was something to be embraced and not used as an excuse. And she was one of the people who encouraged me the most to go into a different area of special librarianship at the Library of Congress. Yes, as Mary Kay mentioned, 140 organizations and people gave recommendations, but the one that really stood out for me was from Dame Hewitt. Her endorsement meant the world to me. And to be able to have her at age 95, she didn't dance, but she was there in her full glory at my installation as the 14th Librarian of Congress, made that event so special. And when you think about her legacy now of excellence and service to others, whatever type of library that you're in this challenging time, we need to look at her life, look at her accomplishments, and get encouragement. I'm so pleased that we'll be in dialogue in a few minutes with the students who are interested in this profession, because it is the time when we step forward for social justice, for everyone's right to read freely, and to encourage. And I'm looking at my note about the Aurora Reading Club, the oldest and the largest African-American reading club in the city and probably in the nation, that we know that knowledge is power, information is power, and Miss Hewitt was a guiding light for so many of us. So I'm here tonight with you in honor of her. I owe a debt to her, and I want to officially say that, yes, I've had other mentors, I've had other people who've encouraged me, but Dame Hewitt was one of the people who made it possible for me to be Librarian of Congress. So I'd like to open it up, and I know that we have our panel.
Okay. I'm Kizuana Rains, and thank you for opening up Dr. Hayden. I really love what you said about Dame Hewitt, about how she was basically one of your helpers. And I actually have a question about helpers. So I see how has she helped you in your journey and how she has motivated you through her letters. Do you have other helpers who assisted you in navigating your unique pathway into librarianship?
Well, I've been very fortunate. I've had helpers inside of the profession and external to the profession, who is starting, of course, with my family and my mother, who Mary Kay mentioned, at 92, was at that concert encouraging me and was a role model for me as she moved through her social work profession after being a musician. And I recall being in the back of meeting rooms when they were having community meetings and hearing people talk, doing my homework, but hearing people talk about different city services that weren't working. And it was really a path for me to think about librarianship as a social service. And then along the way, I was fortunate to be paired with librarians who were also role models. Annie Carroll in Chicago, children's librarian, who was similar to Dame Hewitt in terms of being always immaculately dressed, a lady involved with so many things. However, she was dedicated and would not leave the branch library to be promoted or doing things because she was so dedicated to what she was doing. So I've had people like John Johnson, the head of Johnson Publishing Company, who advised me to move and get out of the comfort zone that I was in. And so those helpers along the way, and some of the help, I didn't even realize that they were helping me by actually saying, you're not ready for this at this time too. So help could come in quite a few different ways.
I like what you said about helpers, because it seems like helpers can also act as examples. And so this reminds me about how you sometimes refer to yourself as an accidental librarian because you didn't originally consider librarianship as a career, and it's actually from when you saw a colleague sitting on the floor in jeans reading books to a group of autistic Black children where you started having that idea. So what was the importance of that moment in your decision to pursue a library career?
Well, we're all friends here, and I have talked about this. Yes, it was an accident because I thought after graduating from college with a degree in political science and a minor in history that I might go into law. And my dear mother at the time suggested that while I was considering this, what I was going to do, I might seek employment. And I went between job interviews when they told me things like, you have a good grade, you seem nice, but you have no work experience. So that's why internships and those things are very important. And I definitely encourage them now. I went to my favorite place, the Chicago Public Library. And one of my colleagues who had just graduated with me came in and said, hey, are you here for those library jobs? They'll hire anybody. And what he meant was people with undergraduate degrees, and we still do that, to introduce them to librarianship. And so I went up, but applied, got in, and said that I liked to be in a community. I didn't want to be in the central library. And they put me on the south side of Chicago with a young lady who was going to library school. And yes, she was on the floor when I first walked in the library at Branch, having story time with autistic children. And I thought, this is not what I thought being a librarian was going to be, or what a library career would be. And that experience of seeing someone doing what I knew from my personal life and seeing social work in action was a connection for me that clicked. And it also, I have to say, full disclosure, I was rejected my first time going to apply to library school because I thought, okay, this is what I want to do. I think this could be it. And I went, and the dean at the time was another library legend, Dr. Peggy Sullivan at the University of Chicago. And I might have been a little arrogant, thinking, how hard could it be? It's library school. So I went and I said, I'd like to apply. And she listened to me and she said, I don't think you have what it takes. And that really got me, and was kind of dejected. And I left and I went back and I talked to my mom and said, I want to help people. I want to do this. I can do this. And she said, well, go back and say that. And when I did, she said, that's what I wanted to hear. You need a passion. You need to, you're in it to help people. And so that was the start.
I love that story because it really ties into the helpers idea too. And this makes me consider about the social justice role that libraries have. And so what do you think is the role of libraries in facilitating equity and social justice? But also, what way has your understanding changed and developed during your time in public libraries?
One of the best ways to think about social justice is captured in Alberto Manguel's book, The History of Reading. And he has a chapter about forbidden reading. And the photograph that introduces the chapter shows a woman who probably was a slave and had a book, and she was in front of like a small house. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is the gist of it, with social justice, as centuries of dictators, slave owners, tyrants, and other illicit holders of power have always known, an illiterate crowd is the easiest to rule. And if you cannot prevent a people from learning to read, the next best recourse is to limit its scope. And the chapter goes on with book burning, censorship, and all of these examples of limiting and trying to limit people's access to knowledge and information. And when you look at budgets, especially public libraries, where those are sometimes the lifeline for so many people, the number one reference inquiry still in public libraries is about health information. When you think about limiting people's access to libraries, you know that there is a justice component in that. Free people, and we're saying this a lot now with all of the challenges we have, free people read freely. And we have to know that libraries are opportunity centers for so many people.
That was beautiful. It reminds me of something I read in regards to when you were nominated or when you became the Library of Congress, and about how it was such a historic moment, you being a person of color, to become the Librarian of Congress when before Black people was barred from even reading. And so it makes me consider, how has the landscape changed from when you first started joining the library field, especially the library field that has been predominantly white, and what advice would you give to people who are BIPOC, who's interested in pursuing libraries, and also other underrepresented groups?
That what has changed is there are more people in the profession that are role models and that are doing things. If you look at some of the head of the Public Library Association right now is a young lady who's wonderful Sonia Alcantara, and she is at the Baltimore County Public Library. You have people that are heading up large systems now that you could look to. When I was starting out in the 70s, there weren't that many people to look to, and they are in all types of libraries. Still, though, I have to say, Dame Hewitt is special in terms of special librarianship. We don't see as many there, and that's why she's still such a role model for so many people. I'm glad that we're celebrating and getting the word out about her, because that's another avenue, special librarianship, that some of the people going into the profession might not see a path for themselves. So that has changed. The advice I have is do it. We need you. This is the time when getting into a profession, there's so many aspects of the profession now. The young people who set up this program where I can be there with you virtually, that there are all types of roles that you can play in libraries to help other people. And so I would stick it out, and get involved with the professional organizations too. There's student chapters of every library association. You have the Allegheny County Library Association that's part of this program. So get involved with the profession, find other people who are doing things that you're interested in, but just get into it. We really do need you.
You. And what advice do you have for what libraries can do to better recruit and retain those BIPOC staff, or those staff who comes from underrepresented communities?
And I'm still working on that, even at the Library of Congress. What we can do in the field is to have our services be relevant, to be in those places, to go to something that they still do, career days. There should be librarians there to get out of our buildings and go into communities, to be someone that the young people see doing things and being active, so that they say, you're a librarian? Yeah. And be relatable, and have staff members who are relatable to the communities they serve. That's one of the most important things that we can do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hayden. We now have questions from Erica Hughes and also from Santana Mitre.
Dr. Hayden, it's a pleasure to speak with you. My question is, what are your top 3 reasons that someone should become a librarian?
All 3, and it's like that commercial where they ask, this insurance guy says the same thing, the same price over and over, no matter who asks what their price would be. I would say you can empower others, and you will be able to get satisfaction with making a difference in communities, on campuses, and companies, that you can make a difference. And I mentioned those other opportunities. Whatever you can bring in terms of your talents and skills, whatever you're good at, there's a place for you in the profession. And you will be able to make a difference now, but also in the future. You're going to be part of a movement that has been in existence for decades to help people when they need it the most. And so I would say you have that opportunity in this profession.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you, Kizawanda and Santana, for being a part of this conversation, and to all of you for
joining us on this night of remembrance, and especially to you, Dr. Hayden, for talking with us. I just have a couple questions for you. The first one, the connections and stories hidden in knowledge institutions can be at both times sobering and gratifying as we search through the records of those that came before. What can you share with us of times you were surprised, upset, grateful, or any range of emotions you might have had when you were parsing through the many stories present in the Library of Congress?
One surprise was that the Library of Congress has samples of hair, Hair, all type, Beethoven's locks, but also 4 locks of Thomas Jefferson's hair. And it's interesting because there's a ongoing, I'm pausing in terms of how to phrase this, ongoing concern about the legacy of Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson. And so the fact that the library has locks of hair that could possibly be used in verifying that was something, somewhat a little upsetting as well. But the real upset that I felt was reading in his own hand Frederick Douglass's thoughts on the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. My family's from Illinois. I spent every summer in Springfield. In fact, they are, so everything was Lincoln. And then I spent that time and still live in Baltimore, where Frederick Douglass famously said, once you learn to read, you're forever free. So to actually pull out, like serendipity really it was, I found out later, the file and just open it at random, because I was like, wow, you have the papers of Frederick Douglass and they're in his own hand. And I just opened one file and there it was. And you could feel the emotion in looking at his handwriting, because he emphasized, and I'm doing it like this, he was murdered, he was assassinated, he was killed for the colored people. And to stand in those stacks as a person of color who, yes, comes from people who were denied and whipped and their fingers were amputated. In fact, I was going to list all of those laws at that inauguration. And my dear mother said, Carla, that could be a downer. Could you sum it up? You know, that people who looked like you were forbidden to read. But that seeing that in his own hand was something. And then I'm grateful, though, that technology now allows us to digitize those types of records. And you can see in people's own hands what they actually said and felt. And so at the Library of Congress, what's the challenge is, how can we make those things available to people who can't physically be in those stacks, who can't sit there like Alex Haley did in the great reading room and look at records? So that's what I'm working on now.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's such a weight and complexity to being in that space with these works, and it in some ways aligns with my next and maybe last question. But yeah, I'm sure many people can remember seeing the musician Lizzo playing James Madison's crystal flute. And that image makes us reflect on the ways that most US institutions weren't built with Black people in mind. So to see a Black woman play such an iconic piece of the archive, it was very important. What ways have you, or do you expect to, further connect the history of the US with young people today? And so far, what strategies seem to work the best?
A strategy that worked, and that's why we need more digitally native people to enter the profession, because that Lizzo happened because one of the younger people of color on the staff mentioned that this young lady plays the flute. She was going to be in the Washington area, and the Library of Congress has the world's largest collection of a single instrument, the flute. So he made the connection, and here's another way that institutions and administrators can help with encouraging services to communities and being open to the ideas of some of our, all of our staff members. They said, let's tag her. I never would have known what that was, but we did, and invited her to come. And what was interesting about that, there were people reacted in many weird ways, but the one post that told me something was that someone said, now there will be more young people of color thinking about the flute as an instrument by seeing her, and that she said history is cool. So connecting in the ways that younger people get information and what's possible for them has been a strategy that we've been using with our Of the People initiative, connecting to digital archives, putting more things online. For instance, the concert that played on Monday, just yesterday, had two young women who played the string instruments, violin, that were part of it. The next day, they came to the Library of Congress and played Stradivarius violins at the Library of Congress. And they played Lift Every Voice and Sing and put it on the internet. And we've gotten so many responses, and what people are saying, and what we want to do is, and we track like every library does, what are people looking for, what are they saying? And the number one question is, what else does the Library of Congress have? And then they're going to put in something, and they might find Rosa Parks' peanut butter pancake recipe, because we have the largest collection of cookbooks. They'll find all types of things that they can use and download and get inspiration from, and then think about contributing to history themselves.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I wonder if, I don't know if you guys have a TikTok, but that would be a good TikTok series to
I
connect
think
with the
we
young
might.
folk.
I think we might. Just to let another full disclosure, we are friends. They don't let me look at anything like that. They're afraid I'll touch something and like it inadvertently or not. But we do have it, and that's where our social media staff are very attuned to that and doing it.
Thank you for sharing.
And now I invite Amy Anderson to come to the podium.
Okay, thank you very much. On behalf of the Allegheny County Library Association, I want to thank you, Dr. Hayden, for being here. We do have an opportunity to get a couple questions from the audience.
Oh, great.
So if you're up for it.
Oh, yeah.
We would love to ask some questions. So if anybody has any questions, raise your hand. We've got some runners out in the aisles, and they will bring you a microphone, I think. I can't see anybody, so.
I was hoping, well, I can't either, so that's okay. So just tell me a little about yourself, too.
My name is Marianne Key, and I am the inaugural development officer for the HBCU Library Alliance.
Yay.
And I'm very happy to be here today. And for you young ladies on the panel who are looking for jobs, today I talked to Howard University. They have 4 jobs opening in their library. So see me afterward, and maybe we can make a connection or two. But the important thing is that we at the library, HBCU Library Alliance, we are responsible for raising funds so that our schools can have access to preservation, conservation, librarianship, professional development, and internships, by the way. And so now we are faced with the book banning and the dissolution of DEI programs that are impacting our work and the work that we do that is so important. And myself, as a fourth generation HBCU graduate, I would like to hear your advice on how we can kind of combat what's coming down the pike for our very important HBCU universities and our universities that are not HBCU. Thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing up HBCUs. I was born on the campus of Florida A&M, FAMU. My dad was down there to teach, and one of the things that I've tried to do at the Library of Congress actually connects with HBCUs and Howard University specifically. And so I've just joined the board of Howard University to make sure that, for instance, this is the world's largest library, and it's right there physically. It should be an extension of Howard University's program. And so our goal is to have every incoming freshman get the reader's card, get the introduction. We've already had some good sessions, for instance, with our music department and the School of Arts, and bringing the students over, doing that. And we also have started a program of internships it's called the AHA program, and it's funded by an African-American couple, the Wellborns, to give paid internships to the Library of Congress to HBCU students. And that's expanding, and we'll be working on that. So we need to talk a little bit more afterwards and be in connection, because we want to make sure that those experiences, that we are an extension of the resources for HBCUs. It's a challenge on many campuses when there's so many needs to have development efforts focused on conserving the history of even the alumni of some of the HBCUs. When you think about the alumni and their archives, we have to work together to make sure that those resources are preserved and conserved.
We have a second question back here.
Dr. Hayden, my name is Kenneth Love, and I am a 1971 student at the library at Pitt that you went to before me, and I work as a filmmaker. Since you mentioned Howard University, we have a common friend there who is helping me with a film I made, Brown v. Board, 13 Minutes, Florence, who you know, Florence. So, but specifically, I want to thank the Library of Congress, because I used 164 files from American Folklife, Glenn Piercy collection, in a film that we made on Montgomery, 1965. Are you familiar with that collection by chance?
Maybe not that particular one.
Okay. Well, basically, it's 19. So what happened is Donnie Graham from Harvard University sent 3 Kinsman students, journalists, down to Montgomery. They photographed what happened in Montgomery, and because of those photographs, the next day after the posse beat up people, including University of Pittsburgh students, 165 went, the judge gave Dr. King the right to march. And it's a film that I was privileged to make. We interviewed the students, and I just want to personally thank you for those photographs. I used them, they were free.
And they're free, and that's important. And see, this is an illustration, and I'm so glad that you asked, do I know? No, I'm a professional librarian, and I thought I knew about the Library of Congress, and I that's when I started getting on social media and said, hey, I don't know everything that's at the Library of Congress. So we're starting on an adventure. And so those types of discoveries are what we really want people to, you would be amazed. And that's that surprise that I have. The Bayard Rustin, we had the Bayard Rustin paper. So the people who worked on that film, they were doing research right there at the Library of Congress because we have the papers. And there's so many other collections that are all free for people to use. And it's really one of my goals to just open up what we call this treasure chest for everyone, because it is the National Library. It is your library.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hayden, for your contribution to society and American society. I had a question regarding genealogy. As you know, for many African Americans, we hit a wall of lack of information after 1870. What are you what are you able to do as far as encouraging smaller Southern record keeping and genealogical information, Freedom of Information Acts, so that we can discover the heritage that has been so heavily hidden from us? Thank you so much.
The Library of Congress has and this states in a crackerjack genealogy team, and there are several staff members that specialize in African American heritage in particular. And what is happening now, we're forming more partnerships with local historical society, local history groups, churches, all types of ways that we could be part of helping with the discovery process and making connections with our sister institutions, the two that we work most closely with, the National Archives. And for the first time, they have the woman as the 10th, I think, Archivist of the United States, who worked at the Library of Congress. So that partnership, and then of course, the Smithsonian Institution. And Dr. Lonnie Bunch, who's a historian, has been very just wonderful in terms of how we can work together and get programs out there. They had, for instance, when the African American Museum, before they opened, they went with a mobile unit into communities. And so the Library of Congress is looking at doing the same thing and going out and being in communities, and here's how you do research, here's also how you preserve what you have, and being that resource in communities.
I think is that, okay. Thank you very much for your questions. Oh, we do have time for one more.
I'm Thelma Lovett Morris, and just so proud that a Pittsburgh musician has his archives now in the Library of Congress, Billy Strayhorn.
Yay! Now I have to admit that I initiated that. And
Family member, I thank you.
Okay, because I'm the child of two musicians. I mentioned my dad, my mom, piano and everything. And I knew when that collection became available, and we're adding to it too. So thank you, because it's so important, and you will see more about Billy Strayhorn from the Library of Congress.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Dr. Hayden, thank you so much for your wonderful stories about Dame Hewitt, between what you had to say and what Vivian Hewitt had to say. I think I'm going to race everybody out to go put a hold on that book.
Get the book.
And I know I can Google her, so.
And it's also available on Amazon, just saying.
Oh, okay. That way we don't have to wait. But no, thank you so much, talking about her inspiring life and how her librarianship started here in Pittsburgh, and just it's exciting. And knowing that this lecture series is developed to help encourage young people of color to join this amazing profession, which I have to say is quite possibly the biggest kept secret in the world. Be a librarian, it's the best job ever. And I want to encourage young people who are interested, or if you know any young people who are interested, to please, I'm going to put Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh on the spot, just along with the Allegheny County Libraries, and say, we are here to help you. We want to make the future of librarianship not just about the books. It's about the social justice. It's about the community. It's about our world. And this is the work that we can do together. So please, I encourage you all to make some new librarians out there. So, but Dr. Hayden, I want to thank you very much for your time here today. And thank you for your inspiring words. Woohoo!
All right, tell them that.
I want to thank my partners, the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh and the University of Pittsburgh School of Computing and Information for working on this lecture series. I want to thank Kishwanda Rains for joining us, Santana Mitre, and Erica Hughes for asking such wonderful questions and being a part of this. And I want to thank Vivian Hughes and the Hughes family for being a part of this. It's, you know, I started to learn a little bit about Dame Hughes when we were talking about doing this, and I know I have a lot more to learn, and I am so excited to do it. She's an inspiration to us all. And yes. And again, a big round of applause for Dr. Carla Hayden for joining us this year. And thank you all so much for being here as well. I would like to now invite Dr. Deborah Rogers to the podium.
Thank you, Amy. Again, my name is Deborah Rogers, and I serve as the Director of Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility here at CLP, and I have to mention that I am a proud graduate of Howard University. So we'll be sure to get our first inquirer connected with Dr. Hayden's team post-lecture. Today is National Library Workers Day, and so would you please join me in thanking all of the library workers who helped to make this event possible. We hope that you heard something this evening that inspires you to take action. If you are not sure what your next step might be, we are here to help, as has already been mentioned. I do want to specifically say that Wiley Avenue Days is also available to be checked out from the library, so that's another point of inspiration for you. We do want to invite each of you to join us for a reception where, in addition to delicious food, there will be opportunities to thank a library worker, ask a library worker a question, and even learn how to become a library worker and explore other career opportunities. When you exit the auditorium, we would ask you to exit to your right, my left, and follow the hallway and guidance of CLP staff to show you the way to the reception in our Southwest Reading Room and oversized book rooms. We do hope to continue the dialogue with you there. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks again to Dr. Hayden. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.